We always assumed the end of the world would come with a warning, a diplomatic breakdown, a summit in Geneva, or at least a breaking news alert. We were wrong. At 4:16 a.m., while the bakeries in Lublin were warming their ovens and children slept in perfect silence, the timeline of human history secretly expired. There was no roar, there was no negotiation. There was only a single silent blip on a NATO radar screen that marked the precise moment the world we knew ceased to exist. But over southeastern Poland, that assumption dies in a heartbeat. A radar operator at a NATO early warning station stares at a screen showing something that simply shouldn't exist. It is a single inbound projectile tearing through the atmosphere at hypersonic speed. In the old days, the days of the Cold War, we were promised a window of 15 to 30 minutes. We were promised a red phone ringing in the night. But warfare has evolved faster than our diplomacy. The alert goes out instantly, but the math is unforgiving. The time to impact is less than 90 seconds. There is no time to wake a president. There is no negotiation, no delay, and no chance for human confirmation. The missile strikes near the industrial city of Lublin, home to 340,000 people. The blast registers at over 200 kilotons. A blinding flash cuts through the dawn sky, visible all the way across the borders in Ukraine and Slovakia. In that fraction of a second, tens of thousands of lives are gone. The rest of the world wakes up to a sunrise they no longer recognize. In the command centers, the picture clears before the smoke does. Satellite feeds from the European Space Agency and US Strategic Command confirm the unthinkable. A nuclear detonation on NATO territory, the first use of such a weapon in combat since 1945. Within minutes, the old secure hotlines between Washington, Brussels, and Warsaw ignite. But on the ground, the machinery of government doesn't just spin up, it disappears. The Polish cabinet goes immediately silent, relocating to an undisclosed bunker near Kov. Before most of Europe has had its morning coffee, the United States raises its nuclear forces to DEFCON 2, a level of readiness we haven't seen in generations. But this isn't the clean binary standoff of the Cold War. In 1980, we feared the red phone. Today, we have to fear the feed. Confusion reigns almost instantly. Russia immediately denies responsibility, pushing a narrative that the blast was a Ukrainian air defense malfunction. In the age of information warfare, the truth is the first casualty. Social media floods with fabricated images and faked videos, allowing panic to spread significantly faster than the actual information. By sunrise, the panic has physical consequences. Across the continent, sirens begin to test. Metro systems fill with terrified commuters, and airports close within hours. In major capitals like London, Berlin, and Paris, emergency broadcasts instruct citizens to remain calm and prepare for evacuation, but the streets tell a different story. Fuel stations overflow and the roads jam. Civilians stand frozen, refreshing their phones, searching for a clarity that simply isn't there. And perhaps most terrifying of all is the military hesitation. In that first hour, despite the devastation in Lublin, no one fires back. The world understands this was no accident, but the question shifts from who fired first to how or if humanity can survive the answer. By mid-morning, roughly 12 hours after the strike, the open borders of Europe begin to seal themselves shut. The center of gravity shifts from the smoking crater in Poland to a reinforced room deep beneath Brussels. Here, the North Atlantic Council convenes an emergency session. There are no cameras, no press, and no phones allowed inside. This is the moment the alliance was built for. Yet inside that room, the atmosphere is not one of immediate retribution, but of paralyzing weight. The alliance faces a decision unseen in modern history. They must decide whether to treat this detonation as a deliberate act of war, triggering the full force of Article 5, or to classify it, momentarily, as a catastrophic accident. The difference is semantic to the dead, but for the living, it is the difference between a regional tragedy and global annihilation. Publicly, the leaders urge restraint to prevent panic, but privately, mobilization orders spread like wildfire. We see the gears of the old Cold War machine grinding back to life, stripped of the rust of the last 30 years. Germany initiates Operation Shield Wall, activating air defense batteries from Bavaria all the way to the Baltic Sea. France, trusting no one, quietly disperses its nuclear submarines into the deep Atlantic to ensure a second strike capability. Across the ocean, the United States begins the transatlantic surge. Stealth bombers depart from bases in Missouri and Diego Garcia under strict radio silence. The message is clear. We are preparing for the end, even as we pray for a pause. While the diplomats speak in hushed tones in Brussels, the reality in Poland is loud and horrific. In Warsaw, the sky is black with smoke, fire crews lacking proper gear, wear improvised radiation suits to battle flames that simply won't die. Hospitals in Krakow overflow with burn victims and radiation sickness cases, jamming every ambulance route in the region. In the nearby villages, the Geiger counters are screaming into the red. The Polish president, before vanishing into an underground bunker, issues a single haunting sentence to his people. We have suffered a nuclear strike. We will endure. But as panic mutates into paralysis across the continent, the question in Brussels remains: endure for how long? We have spent the last 40 years building a world based on efficiency. We call it just-in-time logistics. We optimized our economies to be lean, fast, and borderless. But what we forgot is that efficiency is the enemy of resilience. It takes less than 24 hours for that optimization to become our greatest weakness. Across Europe, panic doesn't just spread, it mutates into a total societal paralysis. The delicate digital nervous system we rely on simply snaps. Internet networks crash under record demand as millions try to contact loved ones or doom scroll for news that isn't coming. The breakdown is physical and immediate. Supermarkets, operating on thin daily margins, immediately limit purchases, rationing salt, batteries, and bottled water. The shelves go bare, not because there isn't food, but because the trucks have stopped moving. In a matter of hours, the illusion of control collapses. Financial markets, which usually hate uncertainty, simply cease to function. In London, the markets collapse before the closing bell even rings. Oil breaches $200 a barrel, and the price of gold doubles overnight as investors flee paper money for something, anything real. In the United States, the New York Stock Exchange remains closed for a second day, a silence that speaks louder than any crash. On the ground, the refugee crisis begins instantly. Trains moving out of Eastern Europe fill with refugees and soldiers in equal measure. The roads of Poland and Western Ukraine are choked with cars that have become steel coffins. Engines dead, fuel gone, families sitting on the asphalt with children wrapped in blankets. Volunteer convoys from Germany and the Czech Republic try to drive east carrying iodine tablets and medical kits, defying government orders to stay back. But the infrastructure is clogging up. In London, Berlin, and Paris, the advice is terrifyingly simple. Prepare to remain indoors for the next 72 hours. Beyond the skyrocketing numbers on the gas pumps or the empty shelves, a simpler, darker truth settles in. The illusion of safety, the belief that the system will always provide, is gone. We are learning in real time that civilization is only 3 meals deep. By the second day, the geopolitical noise of the United Nations is drowned out by the silent mechanical shifting of the world's war machine. The United States raises its nuclear forces to DEFCON 2. For those old enough to remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, the meaning is clear. We are one step away from the key turn. This is the return of the silent service. The ocean, once a commercial highway, becomes a hidden chessboard. France, acting on sovereign instinct, immediately disperses its nuclear-armed submarines from their pens, sending them deep into the Atlantic. Within hours, Allied submarines vanish from ports across the hemisphere, reappearing nowhere on radar. They go dark, running silent and deep, ensuring that if the continents above burn, the retaliation will still arrive. Above the water, the mobilization is louder, but just as terrifying. Strategic bombers begin continuous patrols over the Atlantic, reviving the old chrome-winged vigils of the 1950s. Stealth bombers depart from bases in Missouri and Diego Garcia under strict radio silence. The airspace over Eastern Europe transforms into a layered maze of aircraft, hunter-killer drones, and interceptor missiles on standby. But the most chilling aspect isn't the hardware. It's the intelligence. Intercepts hint at Russian troop movements along the Kaliningrad corridor. While Moscow insists its forces are defensive, the United States presents satellite data pinning the launch to a specific site near Smolensk. Diplomacy has turned into theater. The real conversation is happening in deep bunkers where soldiers sit beside launch consoles, staring at screens that could rewrite civilization. Analysts call this the most dangerous pause in human history. It is a full 24 hours of military stillness where every radar blip, every glitch, or every nervous officer could trigger the end. The heavy machinery is in place, the safety catches are off, and the world waits for the one signal that cannot be unspoken. If the first day was defined by shock, the third day is defined by a terrifying, suffocating suspense. By the afternoon of the third day, we are no longer reacting, we are positioning. NATO mobilization reaches levels unseen since the darkest days of the Cold War. Over 50,000 troops are deployed eastward, turning the borders of the alliance into a coiled spring. But the real danger isn't the troop numbers, it is the ambiguity. In Washington, the president signs an executive order authorizing proportional readiness. The phrase is deliberately vague. It gives the United States the legal authority to act, but leaves the timing undefined. It is a diplomatic weapon designed to make Moscow blink, but in the Kremlin, it is read as a countdown. State television in Russia declares that any Western strike will be met with a mirror response. Even China, while publicly calling for restraint, quietly activates its own military alert systems. This is where the alliance begins to creak under the pressure. Inside NATO command, the unity shown on television begins to fracture. Some factions argue for an immediate retaliatory strike to show resolve, while others plead for a diplomatic freeze. The trust evaporates. The United States, Britain, and France begin drafting separate contingency plans, signaling a quiet unraveling of the unified front. The world watches the clock move closer to a confrontation everyone can see, but no one seems able to stop. We realize that the most dangerous person in the world is no longer a head of state. It is one nervous radar officer or one soldier misinterpreting a signal. The systems are too tight. The nerves are too frayed. Words have lost their power. The only thing that matters now is physics. We have entered a period where the machinery of war is so primed that a single glitch could turn tension into annihilation. 72 hours after the nuclear strike on Poland, the world exists in a terrifying suspension. No new missiles have flown, yet nothing feels stable. The immediate panic has settled into a deep, grey reality. Europe is now divided into zones of silence, each cut off by fear and fallout. The sensory details of the new world are haunting. In the border regions, the air smells faintly of iron and rain. At night, the skies over Poland shimmer, illuminated by radioactive dust particles that used to be homes. What was once a country has become a permanent warning. For the first time in generations, the phrase World War III is no longer speculation or a movie script. It is vocabulary. As the sun rises on the fourth day, the realization hits. We cannot hold our breath forever. When historians look back on this week, if there are historians left to do so, they will not record a moment of decisive victory or loss. They will record the hesitation. They will write about the silence that followed one explosion and preceded everything that came after. The first 72 hours did not destroy the world. They merely showed us, with blinding clarity, exactly how close it already was to ending.